glad to inform Kenyans that I have today assented to the bills as a sign of my commitment to political reforms.
When in November 1991, Kenya's third president, the late Daniel Moi, signed into law 3 constitutional reform bills, one of them repealing Section 2A of the Constitution, it opened doors for the return of multi-party politics in the country. But despite electoral reforms over the years, the commission charged with overseeing elections in the country has had a troubled past.
There is an overwhelming obsession with the desire to lead, to be president. How is it possible that an electoral body that conducts 6 elections is only demonized with regard to a specific election, the presidential election, and it's even being demonized by members of parliament who participated in the election, offered themselves as candidates, went on to win? Governors, senators, MCS. It is not possible that an electoral body could be so defective to the extent that it conducts some segments of the election so perfectly that even when some of the outcomes are taken to court as petitions, the courts still find that they did a good job. We have already seen a number of election results being upheld in various constituencies. So I think it's really about us rather than about the commission, rather than about the electoral processes. And so each time, after each election, we want to shift the goalposts, thinking that this time, if the ball goes where I hit it the last time, the goal will be there and I will score.
As the multi-party wave hit the country, Kenya in 1992 held its first elections since the return of multipartyism. The late Zacchaeus Chesoni was at the helm of the Electoral Commission of Kenya, ECK, in an election that saw KANU retain its grip on power.
Kenyans have got to get away from this influence from outside countries as to determine how we can run our elections in Africa.
Ahead of the 1997 general elections, the late Chesoni was appointed Chief Justice and the late Samuel Kivuitu took over as ECK chairman.
And by the time Kivuitu was appointed, there was what we call interparliamentary party group, which sat and decided that we have 10 commissioners at that time from the KANU and 10 commissioners from the opposition. And that is how some of us managed to come in as members of the commission from the opposition. Fortunately for us, when we got there, we found a Chesoni who was a stately man. He called us, we sat with the government, supposedly government, the commissioners, and we chatted our way forward. We all agreed that we have to look at the country, we have to look at the law, we have to look at the constitution, and run the elections as per the constitution. We decided to give little regard to the groups that had appointed us. I personally feel very happy because the person who appointed me to call the commission is the late Michael Malwa, who was the chairman of Fort Kenya. And I want to say that for all the time I was in the commission, Mike never ever called me to ask for any favor.
ECK, under Kivuitu's chairmanship, conducted the 1997 elections.
The Electoral Commission of Kenya is satisfied that the presidential candidate, Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, has received the highest number of votes.
KANU won yet again amid rigging claims by the opposition.
And the observers the international observers have not helped the situation, have not helped at all.
Between 1997 and 2002, we had a lot of changes. We recommended a lot of changes to the parliament, including the counting at the polling station to avoid votes getting lost in between.
Come 2002. A united opposition managed to end the Jogo Party's 4-decade rule. NAC candidate Mwai Kibaki was elected Kenya's third president after beating KANU candidate Uhuru Kenyatta.
The Electoral Commission therefore declares Honorable Mwai Kibaki the president of Kenya.
We were very proud people. We came out very happy because everybody talked about it and because we thought we planned and we achieved.
The 2002 transition polls are hailed as the best the country has had yet. It was the 2005 constitutional referendum that may have marked the beginning of trouble for the electoral body. Mwai Kibaki's government, which campaigned for a yes vote symbolized by a banana, was handed a resounding defeat by Raila Odinga's LDP wing of the government, which led a successful no campaign symbolized by an orange.
The government lost that referendum, and it was very bitter that it had lost the referendum. That is the NACA government. So they felt that the Electoral Commission had let them down to get them to lose the referendum. The commissioners who are retired, who had done their 5 years and were supposed to go, were left out. According to the IPPG, there should have been a consultation between the opposition again and the government to nominate the replacement. Unfortunately, the NACA government went back to prior the IPPG understanding.
Mwai Kibaki appointed commissioners without inter-party consultations, something that put ECK's credibility on the line as it prepared to preside over the hotly contested 2007 polls.
The opposition took it that the Electoral Commission was biased in favor of the administration, the NACA government. So by the time we came to the 2007, the faith in the commission had been tainted. It seems to me, looking back, that it doesn't matter what we would have done. The credibility of the commission had been affected negatively.
Credibility issues that the electoral body is still grappling with 16 years later. Following the 2007 elections, Party of National Unity, PNU candidate Mwai Kibaki secured his stay at State House after beating ODM's Raila Odinga in a controversial outcome that saw Kibaki hurriedly sworn in at dusk for a second term. The controversial results sparked post-election violence, which left at least 1,300 people dead and thousands displaced from their homes. The signing of the National Accord on the 28th of February 2008 marked a new beginning for the country, with electoral reforms among what came to be known as Agenda 4 items. The ball fell on Johan Kriegler's Independent Review Commission to try and find out what really happened during the 2007 elections.
They were so bad in their data collection and in their data transmission and in their data collation that one could not find out what had actually happened.
The Commission came up with a raft of measures to reform the electoral system, some of which were adopted in the Constitution, the Elections Act, and the Political Parties Act.
One thing that Kriegler recommended, but I think it was more of political push than anything else, I didn't personally agree with, is to separate the Secretariat from the Commission, so that he created two centers of power. And sometimes it's very difficult to have two centers of power within the same institution, and they expect positive results.
All along, the opposition was on a campaign to have Kivuitu leave office.
Kivuitu na wenzake waende nyumbani na vile vile jina ya hiyo tume ibadilishwe, maana wa Kenya hawana imani.
The chairman of the Electoral Commission and his commissioners, if they have any moral thread in their fiber, they should have resigned.
The Samuel Kivuitu-led Electoral Commission of Kenya was disbanded by Parliament in 2008.
And we would have done a lot better in 2007 had the Nanaka government continued with the IPPG nomination of the incoming commissioners. So feel a bit let down by the Naka government. And those were the reformists. Most of them were at the front for reforms. They are the ones who brought up the IPPG. Now, when it came to that time, they said no.
ECK was replaced by the Isaac Hassan-led Interim Independent Electoral Commission, which transformed into the IEBC after the promulgation of the new constitution in August 2010. The litmus test for the Isaac Hassan team came with the 2013 general elections. Coalition for Reforms and Democracy CORD candidate Raila Odinga and his running mate Kalonzo Musyoka lost to Jubilee's Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. CORD's disgruntlement ended at the Supreme Court, which dismissed the petition on a technicality. Raila Odinga's defeat marked the beginning of a push for more electoral reforms. At the Uhuru Park 2014 Sabasaba rally, which saw the birth of Okoa Kenya, CORD released 13 demands, including disbandment of the IEBC.
It's something that is deeply etched in our psyche, that when we go out there and offer ourselves as candidates for the elections, we believe that no matter what, we must win. And even when we have more than reasonable doubt in our hearts and in our minds of minds, we still want to come out and believe that we have won. Or sometimes it's even a question of looking at the journey ahead and saying 5 years is such a long time. Somehow I must be part of the government. I must raise the stakes so that I can also have a bite at the pie.
CORD began a referendum push, but failed in its mission after the valid signatures fell short of the 1 million signature threshold. But CORD did not abandon the quest for electoral reforms. It began a campaign for inclusive talks on how to reform the IEBC. Through what came to be known as Machozi Monday, CORD supporters and leaders for over a month held demos outside anniversary towers. The efforts paid off. President Uhuru Kenyatta formed a joint committee of the two houses of parliament, co-chaired by James Orengo and Kiraitu Murungi, to look into the issues raised by CORD. The committee in its report proposed, among other things, the forensic audit of the voters' register by an international audit firm, the reduction of IEBC commissioners from 9 to 7, and a negotiated exit of the Isaac Hassan-led IEBC team. The team was forced to quit, but continued to hold brief in office as a 9-member panel got down to recruit new commissioners. Wafula Chebukati and 7 commissioners were picked to head the IEBC, with the elections less than 7 months away.
If you leave the time until so late, the commissioners come in and they have to heavily rely on the secretariat on various things. We are human beings. Quite often when you have to consult your junior so that you can do this and that every other time. There is that possibility of someone saying, well, we are the people doing it. I guess that was the case with the between Chiloba and Chepkat. It was they didn't give Chepkat sufficient time to ground himself on the functions of the Electoral Commission, so that Chiloba took it as if he was the commissioner, and that landed as where it landed.
New in office, Chebukati landed in the deep end of the IEBC troubles. CORD and other parties which came together to form the National Super Alliance NASA were in court, challenging the award of a 2.5 billion shilling ballot printing tender to Al Ghurair. NASA lost the case, but got a win against the IEBC after the Court of Appeal ruled that presidential election results, as announced at the constituency level, are final. On a NASA ticket, Raila and Kalonzo once again faced off with Uhuru and Ruto in the 2017 polls. Uhuru was declared winner. Raila challenged the results at the Supreme Court and won the battle this time after the Supreme Court nullified the results. But 15 days to the repeat presidential polls, Raila withdrew from the race.
We believe that all will be best served by NASA vacating its presidential candidature in the election scheduled for 26th October this 2017.
But even before the repeat polls, in-house rows at the IEBC became evident with the resignation of Commissioner Roslyn Akombe ahead of the 26th of October rerun. Uhuru Kenyatta was declared winner and sworn in for a second term on November the 28th, 2017.
Amolo Odinga.
2 months later, Raila held his own controversial inauguration ceremony at Uhuru Park on January 30th, 2018, where he was sworn in as the people's president. But through a handshake between Uhuru and Raila in March 2018, Uhuru managed to calm the political temperatures. He faced little opposition in his final term, and the push for electoral reforms was contained. But the IEBC was dealing with infighting. Vice Chairperson Connie Maina, Commissioners Paul Kurgat and Margaret Mwachanya quit in April 2018, citing poor leadership by Chairman Wafula Chebukati. It was a move that led to a legal vacuum. There was no legal framework to guide the filling of vacant positions following the resignation of commissioners. For almost 2 years and 6 months, the IEBC operated with Chairman Wafula Chebukati and Commissioners Boya Molu and Abdi Gulie, and did not have a CEO after Ezra Chiloba was fired. The signing into law of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Amendment Bill No. 3 of 2019 paved the way for the creation of a 7-member team to oversee the filling of vacant positions at the IEBC. Juliana Cherera, Francis Wanderi, Justus Nyangaya and Irene Masit joined the team of 3. But the commission was split right down the middle following the 2022 polls. 4 IEBC commissioners, led by Vice Chair Juliana Cherera, disowned the presidential election results announced by Wafula Chebukati, declaring Kenya Kwanza candidate William Ruto the winner.
It was announced, we are not taking ownership because it was not brought to our attention.
Notably, the 4 other commissioners who were nominated by Uhuru Kenyatta just a year to the 2022 elections.
So when it comes to the appointment of commissioners, my appeal is perhaps we'll have to look at it anew and go back to IPPG and say that the Tume ya Uchaguzi is actually a political baby. It has to be done by politicians. And let's have politicians appointed. I mean, let have politicians appoint the commissioners so that we know Chinina is from the opposition and Tumwa is from the government and vice versa. I mean, we get like that and the rules and the regulation of running the ECK are put in place. other than hiding into, oh, we want impartial people. And actually, when you look at it, you can hardly see any of it. I think we're just being dishonest.
Raila, who vied for the 2022 presidential elections on an Azimio ticket and lost to William Ruto, challenged the results. The Supreme Court upheld the outcome and Ruto was sworn in as president.
We were taken on a wild goose chase that yielded nothing of probative value. We turned to Form 34A for Gasharaigo Primary School, which was sensationally presented by Madam Judy Soweto, advocate. This also turned out to be no more than hot air.
We must try to ask ourselves that how is it that in 1992, 1997, 2007, 2013, 2017, 2022, 6 out of 7 elections, the same individual or the same set of individuals are complaining about a stolen presidential election. There's something wrong, not with the rest of the process, but I think with the way these particular people conduct or prepare for the elections, and therefore they are not able to accept the outcome.
Raila has now taken the contest and fresh push for poll justice to his supporters.
The presidential results announced unilaterally by Mr. Chebukati on August 15th were entirely made up by him and had nothing to do with the votes you cast.
With rallies organized by Azimio, once again, the country is in the same post-election cycle with a push for electoral reforms.
We feel we have done our best for the country, and we believe that the incoming team should pick up from where we have left it and take us to the next level.
The Supreme Court ruling following the presidential election petition may have given the country a head start with changes in the electoral system. The highest court in the land ruled, among other things, that access to servers supporting the transmission and storage of Forms 34A, 34B and 34C to be restricted to IEBC staff during the election period. The IEBC to ensure that servers supporting the elections and those serving the IEBC internal administrative work are distinct and separate, and the IEBC to consider simplifying and restructuring Form 34A and include a column that accounts for stray ballots and having only one section for total valid votes. And much more may need to be done.
We talk of independent electoral commission and even the other commissioners. Finances play a very, very big role in the daily operation of any commission. The finances have been difficult even during our times to get in good time. Chebukati kept complaining up to the last minute that he was not getting sufficient resources to do the normal purchasing of the equipment necessary to run the commission. So when the Treasury releases finances, very little. At the very end of it, at the end of it, they release a lot of money. Now you wonder why the plan cannot be such a seeming so that Chebukati plans what he requires to procure when, and liaises with the Treasury so that they release that money in that time, so that things move in a smooth way. Right now, it is like we go around putting off fires every other time. We have to cry for finances. And what I'm suggesting is, I think Parliament has to take it upon itself to do it like they have done it with the judiciary, agree that a certain percentage of the national income is voted for the Electoral Commission, given its importance, so that the Electoral Commission can plan its work. 5-year work, by the way. The election is a process. It goes through all those 5 years. It has to avail resources to graduate it up to the last minute when you have to buy most of the equipment. But the way it is, you start it and then come to release a lot of money at the last minute, it becomes very difficult, even for planning purposes.
As we increasingly talk about becoming a digital society, a digitalized society, this digitalization must get to the electoral space, and we must have a state-of-the-art electoral process. Think of all that money that goes into preparing for elections, buying the election materials, printing of papers, I don't know, buying of lamps, all those motor vehicles and so on. It must be a very costly affair. I do not know whether we have done a cost accounting exercise and found out how a simpler electronic voting system would work, such that if you just go and you press that button, you voted for Rita. You press this button, you have pressed, you have voted for Barack. And it is done, and we are seeing the stuff in real time, so that there's nobody who is going to tell us that a certain Kamago hijacked some paper in midair and changed it, and then returned it to the polling station for it to be put on the door, and also in the process changed the one which was in your pocket as you are going to Nairobi, so that when you get to Bomas, what you are delivering apparently is different from what you left Kamiridu Primary School carrying.
Wafula Chebukati, Boya Molu, and Abdi Gulies Chenya at the IEBC ended. Commissioners Juliana Cherera, Francis Wanderi, and Justus Nyangaya resigned, while Irene Masit chose to fight for her position and face the Justice Agre Muchelule-led tribunal. The IEBC remains in the spotlight, and the men and women who will take up the hot seat have their job cut out. Rita Tinina, KTN News.